I think player housing would be really, really cool if we had this in World of Warcraft. But is player housing worth a raid tier? That's a good question. Let's see what WoW Crendor has to say.
Player housing in World of Warcraft is something some players have wanted as far back as 2004 when the game launched. I mean, I was looking at some old posts here, and there's a whole bunch of Blizzard replies being like, we can't do housing. It's a huge feature. A lot of dedicated time needed, and that was December
it's like a whole expansion
2004.
at least.
And I don't think a lot of those people thought that 20 years later, we still wouldn't have it. I mean, games like Star Wars Galaxies had it back then. Games like Final Fantasy have it now, right? So what's the deal with player housing? What's the deal? I figured we'd just talk about player housing today. You know, the pros, the cons, garrisons, and have a big discussion because I have always wanted player housing. And so I just kind of want to talk about what I want from it, what I don't really want from it, and just to get everybody's opinion on that. So the first thing I think I want to talk about is garrisons, because that's as close to player housing as we've gotten. And a lot of times when people bring up player housing, you
know what's interesting about garrisons? There were like some people that actually misunderstood what garrisons were when they were announced. Like some people thought, oh, garrisons, this is going to be player housing. I can have like my own house and have like my freaking soldiers, employees, like they all are with me in this sort of key place, and right? And it's gonna be really nice, and it's gonna, I can customize a lot maybe and stuff, right? But then we got this, and we could just literally place buildings and decide which building will be. We couldn't even like manually move the buildings. There were already spots, and these spots you couldn't move them. You could only have there like a small building, there a medium, and there a large building, but you couldn't move them around really, right? So I feel like a lot of people were disappointed because it lacks customization. You can't even pick the color of the buildings or anything, right? Like what's inside those buildings, like furniture. No, you have no option here. And it's kind of strange. Like even in a strategy game, like if you look at Warcraft 3, you have like more freedom and customization options. Like sure, all the buildings look the same, but you can at least position them where you want them to be. And you can, if you place a tower somewhere, you can place it on like a little cliff, or you can place it in the middle of a road. Like you can place it anywhere, right? But you can't do this with garrisons. Everything is like completely fixed. You can only say, oh, you want the small building to be on the right or the left side, and that's it. But you can't move it even by an inch.
It's close to player housing.
People were disappointed.
A lot of times when people bring up player housing, they bring up garrisons, right? People go, oh, I just really want player housing. And they're like, we tried that. We tried garrisons, right? It didn't work out, but garrisons were bad. They were not good. They were
because of lack of customization.
A very poorly implemented version of player housing. They were kind of the primary focus almost of that expansion. They're like, get your garrison, right? And it seemed like you were going to be able to put it wherever you wanted, but it became clear as the game launched that you only had one choice, and it was either Horde place or Alliance place.
Couldn't even pick the
technically
zone.
two, but one depending. And then it was just very uninspired, very bland, right? You know how if you have a player house in some other game, you're like, oh, look at the way I decorated it. Look at the way I have this. You know, I'm showing off some of my achievements and stuff over here, right? And Garrison
collect
like,
trophies of
what's
bosses
your
or
Garrison
something.
look like? Oh, wow, it looks like mine. You changed that one thing there. That's pretty cool.
And it's not racially themed. Like, I think Forsaken, for example, like the undead should have like an undead garrison where you have like the same kind of architecture you have in Brill or the Silver Pine Forest or something, right? When you look at like those Forsaken outposts, if you have this sort of like dark buildings and stuff, or if you're a troll, how you can actually place like huts and stuff instead of those sort of mud buildings with those spikes on. Like, everything is on the horde side super orcish. And if you're like, let's say a night elf, for example, you get all those human buildings and stuff, right? Like, I feel like sometimes if you're a certain race, it doesn't even match you. Or what about if you're a dwarf? Why you don't get those? Why don't you get like a freaking mountain as a dwarf or something where you can have like some sort of garrison that's like inside the mountain with like some tunnels and some nice mountain sort of rooms or something, or whatever you would call those. It's kind of strange. Or like, what if you're like a Draenei? Why don't you get like Draenei sort of architecture in your garrison? It's kind of strange. I feel like they should have at least also making it like race themed, right? So like he said, like Rando just said, like if you have like a friend, Like his garrison will look just like your garrison. So if I play a Forsaken and my friend plays an Orc, we have the exact same garrison, and it's kind of strange.
Oh, and you built that building instead of that building? Anyway, I'm gonna go home. Right, and then all the
don't even have, like,
mobile
your own
game type
house
stuff
really there.
implemented it. It was very clear that it was also designed to be tied into playing on your phone, which also didn't go very well. And so it was just a mosh posh modge podge jumble of garbage. Like it was just bad. And so I think a lot of people are like, well, that's their try at it. But I feel like
Maybe just rune
they
housing
really
for the
could
future.
make a solid attempt at player housing. Now, we do have quotes from various Blizzard developers over the years being like, it's just impossible. Like in 2010 during Gamescom, Tom Chilton declared that housing will be introduced to World of Warcraft sometime right after Never. Granted, these are also the same developers that said, classic WoW, you don't want that. Nobody's going to play that. You think you do, but you don't. In April 2019, however, the developers stated that they are still thinking about how to implement this feature without it feeling too clumsy. So they are still thinking about it. And I know in 2022, just last year, I know Ian was interviewed by Hazelnutty Games, and she asked him about player housing. And he pretty much talked about how it's something that many of them do want, but it's a big undertaking. It's not going to be done in just one expansion like Dragonflight. There's only 2 types of garrisons, and back in WoD, if a Blood Elf player wanted like Silver Moon architecture, they wouldn't really get that.
Yeah.
And it would cost a raid tier, right? Now, I always joke that I would give up some raid tiers for player housing. There's a couple raids.
We do have many raids. Like the only issue there is like this is something I don't like, and that's the scaling. So right now it's like much better, and like with late Shadowlands, they actually thought about like what can we do like M+. We should always have like more older M+ dungeons, right? And like the other day I did on my priest some Netharan's lair and stuff like that, right? And like early Shadowlands, this was almost impossible to get M+ Netharan's lair ever again. So it's kind of like, okay, you're in one expansion, you only have the M+ from this expansion. Now they're bringing back like older ones as well, but not all of them. And this is the issue. Like what they also need to do is they need to bring all the old content back, and it all freaking scales. Like it doesn't matter which one it is. Make all the raids, even Ice Crown Citadel, freaking scale with you and give you the highest item level that you can get based on if you do it in Mythic or Heroic or something. It's kind of like that. Like it's with dungeons it's better, but with raids it's still lacking completely, because you can't do the old, like all the old raids and stuff and have them scale up with you. So that's the issue. They need to find a way to scale everything, and they don't need to constantly make new raids. Like you can get back to old raids and have a blast. They just need to freaking be on the same item level and the mobs the max level like you.
I could think of. You know what? I'd give up Shadowlands for player housing. That's.
And many
I know
would.
I'm going out on a limb right there, but I'd give up Shadowlands for player housing. They'd call me crazy, but I do understand what they're saying, right? Like if you make player housing in one expansion, then it gets outdated when that expansion gets outdated, essentially, right? Or you're stuck in the past. But I think that's one of the best reasons why player housing could just be an Azeroth.
I think I have a great idea.
It's also a reason that if they do an Azeroth revamp, it's possible that
That's exactly my thought I just had. How about one expansion is not about a raid, but it's about the revamp only of old zones, and a second feature that will come is the housing, like another big part. So it's like mostly focused on revamping the world, but a portion of the focus also goes into housing. Like we don't get a new raid, but old raids suddenly all, no matter which one you pick, scale with you. Maybe they get even like some tiny updates, right? To maybe make some that were too easy a bit more difficult, so people are not abusing this and going to the easy ones to get like the best in slot gear. Maybe add a few more mechanics, make the mobs hit a bit harder than they should, or were hitting or something, right? And then new textures for old looking zones, so you don't feel like you're playing WoW Classic in WoW Retail when you're leveling up a character, because many get this kind of feeling, and it's actually not a Classic because you just one-shot stuff anyway. All zones revamped, but also housing. That should be one expansion.
That's when player housing would be introduced, right? So let's talk about the pros of player housing right now. Okay, so it's a place to hang out with your friends. I think that's one of the things that people love about player housing, right? It's a thing that encourages social activity in a massively multiplayer online role-playing
housing.
game. It encourages multiplaying, it encourages role-playing, and it encourages just hanging out with friends, which that's pretty much what a lot of life tends to be.
Yeah, in real life, for example.
And then you also can decorate and show off things, which I mentioned. It'd be great if you could show off your mounts. Maybe you have like a stable area or like a backyard area where you could have like different mounts just chilling out, or it just picks a couple of the mounts you have, or you could swap them out and have them just chilling in your yard or whatever. That's kind of fun. Okay, funnily enough, though, the Garrison does have this. I went back to the Garrisons and I was like, oh yeah, look, they actually do that. And it is pretty cool. But nobody goes to Garrison, so nobody even knew. So they already have the technology for that as well. And look, they're even taking very good care of my Tazavesh gear glider, feeding it, making sure it's happy.
How sweet.
You could have gear that you have shown off on the wall, like transmogs you've collected. There's plenty of different ideas you could do with that. Different furniture, different things. Then you have the benefit of professions. You could have different professions do things in the player housing, right? Or you can create new professions.
Right? Like anvil for a smith,
the most common one I've heard, where you're making tables and chairs, and you're crafting the furniture for the houses or the
that would be cool.
Houses themselves, I guess, for customization. But I'm sure there's also various.
That's actually cool about Elder Scrolls Online. You actually have that, like. You can make some bets, even based on your race. So if you are like playing, let's say, Imperial Dragon Knight in Elder Scrolls Online, you can create an Imperial bet or something, right? And if you are like a Orc Warden or something, for example, you just make an Orcish bet or something. I think that's so cool. And like, imagine you're like a Night Elf. You have like your housing somewhere in the woods, and then you can have like all those kind of I don't know, beds that are looking like night elvish. You have like those sort of, seats that are like night elvish. You have some maybe flowers inside your house with like some carpets that are night elven design stuff. I think that's really cool.
Ways you could have,
like, I have some
the
good
current professions
imaginations
also
for decorations
to the housing. Like maybe engineers can make some crazy light fixture you can hang on the wall, or
like
whatever. I mean, listen, we got like Animal Crossing now, right? All these games, you probably figure out a few things you do with the current professions, right? And I don't think a lot of these would have to even have brand new assets. Like, we got to create all these new tables and chairs. Like, sure, you would have to, but there's plenty of old assets. I mean, this game has so many assets in it going back 20 years, right?
We just need to find a way to place it.
Old stuff is pretty old. I guess they wouldn't want to use old stuff at that point, but there's a lot of things, especially now when they seem to keep updating more and more. I don't think it would be that big of an issue to find all these assets.
Yeah.
But I'm also not a game developer, so that's the other issue, right? It's easy for people like.
And what they could do from a technological perspective, they can take some of the code and stuff they have for the garrisons, but like update it, change it, and make it different, right? So maybe like the half work is already done if they just take out everything from garrisons, like was shown earlier with the stables and stuff. So actually, if they do housing now, after they already made garrisons, it would be easier and faster for them to do than if they will have to start from scratch, right? And we already have a lot of different types of buildings. Like, they can look in-game code and like, look, there's like a Forsaken building, there's a Troll Hut, there is a Night Elven Tower or something. And they can just take this out and just add it to this housing feature, right? So it's like the half work is already done.
Me, and for people playing the game, be like, just do this. What's the problem, right? So, I mean, maybe I'm just, acting like it's a little too easy. Maybe they are right. Maybe there's, player housing is this giant undertaking.
It's on the old engine though, the game. That's the issue, right?
It is an undertaking worth doing. It's something that players love in various games. And I think another reason for the pros is that it promotes playing and exploring the game. You want to play the game to get stuff for your house. You want to do professions to get stuff for your house, right? You want to learn crafting, so you craft stuff. You want to craft stuff for the economy.
You have a reason
to make
learn
money
it.
doing this, right? It's just everything kind of ties together. And then, you're like, that'd be really cool in my house, but I have to go do this old raid to get it, right? Or get this old transmog, or get whatever it might be to put it in my house.
Yeah, makes
And
all
I
content
think
more
that's just
viable.
cool. It's another reason to play the game when you're in that kind of downward slope, right? When you're down here and there's no big patch for a while or expansion release for a while, and you're like, hey, you know what? I don't got a lot of stuff to do, but I can like chill in my house and get my house some cool customizable stuff and find some stuff for my house and show off and hang out with people. It's like it just makes sense to me that it would be something you'd want to implement and then improve upon through various expansions. Like, they are correct. It seems like it is a lot, which leads us to our first con, which is the developer cost, right? It's a lot of work and effort to put all this stuff into the game, but I feel like once you establish that, you can kind of grow it from there, right? Like,
You know what would also be cool? So we have the calendar with events. We have like Dark Moon Fair, we have the Brewing Fest, we have this and that, right? So how about there's like actually some event where some stuff happens at your house, like a burglary event or something where a burglar just freaking tries to steal stuff from your house, but like there's nothing actually being removed, but maybe you have to catch thieves or something, or maybe there's like some sort of event where like all houses are, I don't know, having like some snowfall or something. Like, I think it would be funny if there were like some events that are connected with housing. So if you have like a house, you can actually participate in some sort of event where you need to be in your house or something. Maybe there's some stuff happening at your house. Maybe ghosts appear during Halloween or something. Like, it doesn't even have to be like an independent event. It can be like one of the events we already have, like the Halloween event. But then just stuff happens at your house. Like, sometimes ghosts appear and they can maybe drop something cool if you kill them or if you interact with them or something. Like, it's actually funny. Like, I have some ideas of what stuff you could do, like with housing, like have like burglars or something appear or some sort of ghost, and if you do something with them or you actually attack them, and perhaps they are yellow, so they are like neutral, so they don't attack you on sight, but you can if you want. Or maybe there's like some sort of buff or a toy or something you can get during an event if you meet up with friends in your house, and maybe you perform some dance or something with each other in your house. You maybe get some toy or some achievement or something, but it's only during a certain event, right? Yeah, there are like multiple things they could do with housing that is more than just decorating and putting it there, but some actual like sort of achievements and maybe certain things that happen during events. Wow, that would be so cool.
you can keep adding more furniture and more stuff throughout patches and expansions and just build upon it. And the main thing for me is keeping it in the old world, right? If it's like in Orgrimmar, Stormwind, like those aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, an extra
right? If you just keep
somewhere.
those in those places, that's fine. Now, I guess the that's when it starts getting a little like, well, what if you want to have it over here? Well, you could do that in future expansions, right? Like maybe in the future expansion after the one you've
There's a
implemented
new
it
house
in,
you can buy.
where you're like Orgrimmar, Stormwind, and the next expansion you're like, hey, you know what? You can go to Thunderbluff now. You can go to all the major cities now. And then maybe the expansion after that, they're like, okay, now we made it so you can go to different zones, right? You can just pick up your house and move it. Again, this might be extremely difficult, and I don't know about the developer implications or workload or whatever it might be, right? But it
would
to
be
me
cool.
it makes sense. But I don't know. The only other thing I saw was storage as a thing for player housing, like as a pro, like storage. But storage, I don't really care. Maybe storing your furniture would be all right, but.
Like an extra
you
bank?
got banks. You don't really need more storage. You got banks, you got inventory slots, you got transmog storage. Like, I don't think you need more storage. Like, I think that's something they don't have to worry about with player housing. So, I don't know. Some other cons that I saw just from reading around was the lore implications from it. I read somebody be like, the lore implications, you're supposed to be this big hero and you got a house. And I was like,
That makes sense.
okay.
No, but
I
it
don't think
makes
it's
sense.
that big of a deal. Blizzard retcons their own lore all the time anyway. Like, I don't know. Who cares about the lore?
But the thing is, like, what he said about lore implications. Like, imagine your characters, like some famous hero, you're doing this and that. Like, don't you get some pay during this? Like, shouldn't you have, like, some riches you got from it? Like, where are your riches visible? I mean, it's not like you can buy some Lamborghini or something in WoW, right? Is that like or some private jet or something? But how can you actually show off your wealth? And I think like those super rich players, they could show off their wealth by having like a big house, like a mansion somewhere. Like imagine you have like a forsaken mansion in the middle of Tirisfal or something, or you have like this gigantic castle as like let's say human fury warrior in Elwyn Forest or something. Or yeah, maybe you have like some sort of church you have as a let's say human priest or dwarf priest or something. That would be cool. Like imagine you could have like a house also kind of like themed after your class or something. No, I'm actually fine if they just theme it after the race, but if there was like a way where like some housings are more like, oh, this is like a chapel or something, like oh, this is like, oh, this is like a church. If you're like a paladin or a priest, like it's actually cool if you have like for a house like a church or something, right? Or you're like, I don't know, maybe a hunter and you get some hut in the woods or something. That would be also cool.
Blizzard retcons their own lore all the time anyway. Like, I don't know. Who cares about the lore implications? And they said storage makes banks less meaningful. Again, like, that's fine. I don't need storage in player housing. And then the other big one I saw as a con to player housing was creating more things to manage, which I guess could be a con, because that is another element of stuff to learn in the game and to manage and to go to and all this stuff. But I would argue that I wouldn't really want player housing to be something that I have to kind of manage and work out daily. You know, like at garrisons, right? At garrisons, you had to like go do your mining and your herbalism and your quests here and there and get your resources. Like, I don't
this is
want
annoying.
that.
Yeah.
I just want
fill in
a
orders.
house
I hate this.
that I can customize and make it look cool, and then be like, hey, everybody, come look at my house.
No troll,
and then you like
please.
keep redecorating it and adding stuff and showing off stuff.
Whenever you find time.
That's it. I don't need all these little mini games and like things attached to it. It's just that's all I would want personally. You know, other people may
Something
disagree.
just visually, yes.
If you do, comment down below and let me know. But that's really all I would want from player housing, is just a cool place to hang out with people, decorate, show off collectibles and stuff, customize.
You know, it's funny. I think like freaking player housing would turn into some second sort of Goldshire. So you have those RP guilds that are chilling at someone's house. Maybe they have like a guild house, right? And they're gonna RP like crazy, dance on tables there instead of Goldshire. I think it would kill maybe Goldshire.
Almost like you're playing Animal Crossing. And again, I think that people just want like World of Warcraft, Animal Crossing style housing. So that's really all I got about player housing.
Once you
Again,
have
let
like
me know in the
notes where you
comment
can
section
farm in
what
your
you
house.
think
Like
about
you can
player
grow herbs
housing.
in
Are
your
you for it,
garden.
against it? How would you do it? Do you agree, disagree, all that stuff? But I did just want to have a little discussion about it, because I was just thinking about it the other day and I was like, man,
Yeah.
I really would like player housing. So
Me too.
let me know. Also, if you want to check out the latest Pointless Top 10, there's a whole playlist of the last Pointless Top 10s. We just had Dark Moon Fair, we had Rats, whole bunch of stuff. You go check it out.
Yeah,
all
that's
the
cool. I
playlists
love
right
the
there.
series.
Or you could check out this other video of me ranting about World of Warcraft stuff. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I think housing would be nice. And what's also important is if they add it, like it needs to be racially themed. Like I said, I had an issue when I was like on a Forsaken and I suddenly had all those orcish buildings. So if you're like a blood elf mage, right? Like why don't you get like Silver Moon like sort of garrison, right? Like one that looks like that from the architecture. So this is kind of like disappointing because you had just one design and your garrison will look just like your friends and stuff. Like I feel like what's so important about housing, if they added that we have like multiple houses you can buy in perhaps multiple locations, and they need to be some racially themed. So there's nothing wrong if, for example, you want to have like orcish like structures on a troll or a goblin or something. I don't see any issue with that, or even as a Forsaken, right? Or vice versa, you get like Forsaken buildings for your orc or something, right? But that you have the option to at least match your race with your house or something. I think that would be very important for me personally, because I also made this experience from Elder Scrolls Online. Like I, for example, a Breton warden, a Magicka warden, and I bought this gigantic Breton castle in a Breton zone. And Bretons are basically like half humans, half elves, for those that don't know. And it's really cool because I have like something that fits my character, right? And soon I will probably get also an orcish stronghold for my orc warden, and it will also fit very, very well. And I want to see the same in WoW, like race themed houses. I think that would be so cool. And is it worth giving a rate up for this, like a rate tier? Most definitely, because if they worry about a lack of content or they want to give something for the veterans, they just bring back our old raid and make it scale with you, so you can get like max item level. Then like those hardcore players that want like a new raid, they can just have a new old raid basically, right? Like they just go back to the old raid like it is a new raid because now it freaking scales up or something. And this is like much less work than to design a new raid from scratch. And if it's like a very old raid, it's also a fresh experience because some people don't remember what they did like 7-8 years ago. Or do you, for example, remember what you had on August the 17th in 2018? Do you remember what you had for lunch on August the 15th, for example, 2018? You don't remember that. So how do you remember what you did which raid like 5, 6, 7 years ago? So if they want to give a fresh experience, just bring something very old back and just make it scale again. People don't even remember this experience 7, 8 years ago. Come on. And give us housing instead. I think that would be a fair deal for everyone, right? But yeah, guys, if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content, and let me know your thoughts on housing in WoW in the comment section. Do you want housing in WoW, and what's important for you? Is it for you also like for me, you want the housing to be racially themed? So if you have, like say, a blood elf, you want Silver Moon sort of housing for you? Let me know. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time.